Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Divorce Unplugged podcast. I'm your co-host, Nicole Cox, and on socials, you probably know me as the Family Law Liaison.
Everybody, Keegan Burke, socials known as Divorceology. I will do my disclaimer. This is not legal advice. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not lawyering. This is our opportunity to have an open conversation and let you behind the scenes regarding divorce, custody, and all things related.
Yes, thank you, Keegan. And I will give you my disclaimer. I am an attorney. I am not your attorney, but I am practicing and I do not give legal advice. This is just a raw conversation to help everyone out there get a little more info on going through divorce and custody.
Yeah. And so today we're going to talk about the overall strategic picture, but then the tactical management of it. And when we talk about that, today is going to center around blind spots, things
Mhm.
that people don't necessarily consider when it comes to pleading or putting their case forward. And I think it's something that even attorneys struggle with identifying because a client or an individual, even if you're pro per, you're so focused and obsessed with your situation that you don't ever step back and look at the broad picture, the message that's being delivered, the perception that might go along with an argument that you're trying to make. And so, what I want to try to do today is help people understand where blind spots exist and things that they should think about along the way.
Exactly. It's a very good subject because I think all too often people don't focus on this in their strategy plan.
Yeah, and so let's touch on something we do somewhat frequently, and that is you can't ignore your blind spots just because you have an attorney. And you can't because the attorney's job is to put forward a legal argument and to represent your interests. And if you go to your attorney and you're saying it's X, Y, and Z, they're going to do their best job to make that argument, but they may not know all the details. They may not know your case and they may not have the time and you may not be paying them enough to focus on all of those, minute details that could later in your case or along the way come back to bite you. So really making sure that you've got a coach, you've got a strategy, right? You know what your case looks like, where you're strong, where you're weak, and understanding what you're really trying to accomplish is the only way you're going to successfully navigate the family court system.
Successfully. I like
That's a subjective
that.
success.
Yeah. That's yes, exactly. No, I agree with you. I've seen so many times people, my clients get so wrapped up in the evidence that's been put into discovery, that they think is going to work against them. And really, honestly, sometimes I see that evidence that's been put into disclosures is working in my client's favor, and the other side has just given us a free pass, basically. So when we say that, it's like opening a door, and I think that that's a term that we use a lot in family law. Is you don't want to open a door to anything that can come in against not in your favor.
Yeah, and it's kind of part of that too would be a good example would be, let's say the opposing side makes an argument, but it's a conclusive argument, right? So and so is bad, right? That's a conclusion, but they don't provide any dates, any examples, any declarations, any exhibits whatsoever. And so you try to argue that you're not bad. That isn't necessarily your best argument, right?
It's a waste of your time and energy in court because now they have you running off into a different direction. And what you really need to be doing is focusing on showing that you are the primary caregiver, you're the fit parent, not going and taking every single allegation against you and defending it.
Totally. And I had somebody give me a really great example of this a long time ago, and it was everybody remembers, I think, the O.J. Simpson Bronco
Mm.
ride, right? And so, as I'm working through, it's this, it's this, it's this. Somebody goes, "Listen, Keegan, there is O.J.'s Bronco ride and O.J.'s murder trial. And now that's not family law, But it does give you an example. If people don't know this, the Bronco ride was never admissible evidence in the murder trial. So just because something happens and just because you think it's important doesn't necessarily that means that it's going to see the light of day in a courtroom, and it certainly doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be important to your case. So
Right.
focusing on your strategy, application of that strategy through tactics, and delivering your best argument is the way you navigate that. And so that was really good kind of perception for me to reflect on going, okay,
That's an interesting metaphor, I would
yeah.
say.
Yeah, because it's everybody would say, well, if we watched in the trial the Bronco ride, he's guilty the day it's seen, right? But it never made it into the courtroom. And even in family law, there is admissible and inadmissible evidence and sort of argue the right things.
Right. Definitely make sure that everything's admissible. And if it's not, you can usually get it in under the best interest of the child. That's just a little hint right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can, but not always. And again, like we want to emphasize, focus on your argument and don't get off track with theirs. Because I've said this before in our podcast, you will go into a custody battle or divorce, and immediately the other side, the opposing counsel, will throw everything they can up against the wall and see what sticks. And we call that the spaghetti trick. So if you can just keep yourself as a person involved and me as a coach and with my clients, keep them focused on their argument and don't get off on a side tangent because you will lose time in court and the judge will end up not listening to your side.
Yeah, and it actually that parlays into the other point. I hear and deal with a lot of people who can't recognize or process the fact that people, and they do, roll into a courtroom where you're supposed to tell the truth, and the other side will lie through their teeth. They will literally say one thing in the hallway, say one thing in a slew of correspondence between you and them, walk into the courtroom and say the complete opposite thing, say something that is just black and white dishonest, and the accountability scale in family court, unfortunately, is very low. There just is not enough accountability for dishonesty in the system. So if you focus on the obsession of, they're not being honest or they're lying, you're getting caught up in their game. That's not
Mhm.
your game. You need to focus on what you're trying to put forward and let their lies just go by the wayside. Now, I say that with the caveat that keeping tabs on those lies and the significance of those lies and what you can rebut or what you can impeach or undermine is
So true.
really important because that does start to kind of parlay into accountability, not through the lens that, they're going to go to jail for perjury, but
No.
it does potentially play a role in the perception of you and them and their credibility going forward in your case. So that's
Yeah,
an important line.
I think that's a really good point. Credibility. I mean, you can get super frustrated. Somebody's lying. I literally have a client right now whose counterpart, co parent lies constantly. And we just have to keep catching it and logging it, And she's gotten to a point where there was a custody evaluation and now all kinds of things going on with the custody eval. But those are just, I would say, if you find yourself in that scenario, log it and then try to show a pattern of behavior because at some point a judge will see that they are lying and then that becomes a pattern of behavior more easily to impeach and then obviously the credibility goes down.
Yeah, and the same thing goes in just oral arguments in a courtroom, right? If the other side says, "Oh, the sky is blue or green," and everybody knows it's blue, you're not going to sit there and try to like rebut every lie along the way because then think about it. If you're a judge, you don't want like it's almost like you're bickering. You're watching your kids bicker in the courtroom. They can't even underwrite the case because everybody's just saying the wrong thing and everybody's opposing it. And now all you have is two jerks in the courtroom, and you don't want to be thrown in the jerk pile.
Okay, so now I'm going to lean in for everybody to listen to. It's called mutually combative and you never win that way.
Yep, totally. Then the other part of this is, as it relates to blind spots, is in your moving papers or in your arguments. I think it happens a lot. It's happened to me where I am thinking about what I want to put forward, or what somebody wants to put forward from an argument perspective.
Mhm.
And I have a great argument, I have great evidence. But whatever my argument might be, I have to look at what the opposing side's argument is going to be. Will they be able to turn that situation and use a different interpretation of it? Because remember, family courts, family law systems are very subjective. They're very discretionary. It's all about interpretation of a situation. And it's really easy for what you think to be a good argument, a good piece of evidence, to be flipped on its
You.
head and used against you,
Yes.
or to your point, opening the door for the other side.
Mhm. Yeah. No, absolutely. I agree with you. I've seen it happen to my clients. I'm sure you have examples of it.
Yeah, it happens all the time, and I would say this again: just because you have a lawyer doesn't mean that you are not at risk of this happening. If anything, a lawyer exposes that exact thing more frequently than not because they're solely focused on their legal argument, your interests. They are not looking through the lens of who are they dealing with. They may not know the opposing side very well. So you have to really kind of do your own due diligence and have your own accountability to your case.
Well, I think that you made a good point about do your due diligence. Like, look at where you're on the offense and where they could possibly put you on the defense,
Right.
you know?
Great
And
point.
where are the holes in your case? Be prepared and, obviously always be open and honest, but be prepared and know the strategy, which again brings us back to you need a coach.
Yeah, yeah. In my mind, it's mathematical, right? It's net benefit. Is there going to be, if it cancels itself out, if your argument leaves, opens the door and presents an opportunity for the other side to score points, you don't make the argument, right? It just, you're really looking for making sure that you're not getting in that muddy, mucky, bickering, mutually combative situation. You're focusing on the key points of your case, your strengths, your role in the child's life, why you belong there, why it should look the way it needs to look. And by the way, that also comes down to the I see a lot. People go after the other side, right? They're bad. I'm better. They don't do this. They do this. All the things that you're focusing on the other side when you should be
And not
focusing on
yourself.
yourself.
You should focus on yourself, like we said.
Yeah.
Always focus on you and your argument and why you're a good parent, fit, etc., and make good decisions. Yeah, and something else you just summed up a minute ago too, Keegan, and I wanted to speak to was if you do have all of that in order and you have a strategy and you focus on yourself, it's less costly than going back and forth and doing the mutual combative game because that's going to cost you a lot of money for a lot of years.
Yeah, actually, that's a great point.
Yes.
The economics of it, and this doesn't just apply to the courtroom, right? This applies to your
Mhm.
intraday interactions with the opposing side, right? Over communication is great, but unnecessary communication is not, right? Responding to every allegation or inflammatory statement or
Mhm.
argument or accusation. it, that's not really the place that you want to do that either. It may not ever make it into court, but you want to make sure that you want to make sure you're capturing it for the cause of using it in as evidence. But
Or a theme.
yeah, but it's not something that you need to participate in, because again, if it does make it into evidence and you're taking the bait, right? You look just as bad as they do participating in the mutually combative, problematic correspondence. You guys can't get along. All you do is argue. And the court's just going to look at it as you're both jerks and this is my ruling.
Oh, I couldn't have said it better. That's exactly, I have so many clients, and one in particular that I'm like, please, 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 pretty please don't respond to that. And a good rule of thumb is only respond to the needs and the development of the children.
Completely agree. Completely agree. There is some train of thought that um, ignoring allegations, and again, it's case by case, right? But making sure that you don't just completely ignore every allegation either, right? So if something comes up that needs to be, sorry, that's not true, or something short, address it, right? They call it adoptive admission in a lot of places. You have to weigh whether or not it requires a
Mhm.
rebuttal or a response. But if it is severe, make sure you at least address it. Just don't get into the weeds of it, right? You
Right.
don't need to plead your case to the other side.
Agreed. I think there are some situations where, and I tell my clients to focus head on and say, okay, yeah, if you want to accuse me of drugs and alcohol or whatever, I'll submit to a test. Or, so sometimes I think it's okay to say, hey, I know that I'm innocent and this is how I'm going to show you. Those are serious allegations. And that's one way to handle something like that. And then the little ones you can just avoid.
Final thoughts on blind spots. There's a lot more to it. It's why you need a coach. But ultimately, it's you need a strategy. You need to apply your tactics. You need to have a sound mind. You need to not be reactionary, and you need to think beyond what you're trying to argue or focus on. Be receptive to all things and prepare accordingly. And that's the way you navigate this
Yeah.
challenge that everybody experiences.
I agree with you 100%. Don't be reactionary. Take a breath, sit back, and focus on what's important. Focus on your argument and not the other person's.
All right, everybody. So, like, share, subscribe, follow, all the things. Thanks for being with us. Look forward to seeing you again soon.
See you all soon.